Good evening. All right, thank you everybody for coming. So I'm Paul Dean, Chair of the Sociology Anthropology Department, which hosts our annual Butler Jones Lecture on Race. Before I introduce our distinguished speaker, I'd like to share with you a little bit of the history about the Butler Jones Lecture. So Butler Jones graduated from Morehouse College in 1937, where he and earned a master's degree at Atlanta University and a PhD at NYU. Jones taught at multiple colleges, but was with OWU for much of his career from 1952 to 1969. He headed the sociology department for 8 of those years and would later retire as professor emeritus from Cleveland State in 1982. You can read details of his prolific career in the brochure, but to give you a sense of how far-ranging his work was, Jones was a member of 28 professional associations, serving in leadership roles in many of those. This included, among many others, having founded and served as president of the American Association of Black Sociologists and serving on our National American Sociological Association. In contributing to the quest for racial equality, Jones submitted 10 briefs in the U.S. Supreme Court in cases involving equal treatment of all citizens. Finally, Jones received numerous lifetime honors and awards, including the 1985 Lee Founders Award, the North Central Sociological Association's Professional Service Award, the Cleveland Federation for Community Planning Distinguished Service Award, and the Cleveland State University Distinguished Faculty Award for Community Service. So in 1995, to recognize Butler Jones' tenure at Ohio Wesleyan University, his contribution to the field of sociology and race relations, his involvement in the civil rights movement, and his commitment to the development of other scholars and professionals, the Department of Sociology and Anthropology established the Butler A. Jones Lectureship on Race and Society. So now for tonight's event. Nina Turner. That was exactly my wife's statement and response when I asked her earlier this year, who is an elected politician or government official that is someone that we know of that is from a working class first-gen student background. I've been working on a new book project, and I was looking for someone in politics whose work focuses on social and economic justice and is also first-gen. And of course, my wife was right. She was perfect. I had already known of Senator Nina Turner from various political positions. When we moved to Ohio in 2012, she was serving in the Ohio State Senate, and I was inspired by her progressive politics. I knew of her leadership in the political action group Our Revolution, and of course, I saw her all over the media in many recent years as national surrogate for Bernie Sanders' 2016 presidential campaign, and then as national co-chair of his 2020 campaign. All along the way, Senator Turner has fought to improve people's lives all across America. She has helped build support for progressive values like a living wage, free education through college, healthcare as a human right, and criminal justice reform. Senator Turner is a bridge builder. She brings people together from all walks of life and teaches us that our struggles have much in common and that we are more effective when we work together for social justice. I was thrilled at the idea of interviewing her for my research, but I knew she's super busy, like really, really busy. And I've reached out to national level people before, and you don't always know if you're going to get a response. So I was really careful in crafting an email to her. I found the email address for her point of contact, and I sent it off. I thought to myself, I probably won't hear back from this email, but at least I will have tried. But and all you students, pay attention right now. Within 24 hours, I got a response. It was from her scheduler, and her scheduler was an OWU grad.
Yes.
And I had her in class, Allison or Allie DeLuz. And Senator Turner done good hiring Allie, by the way. And Allie informed me that Senator Turner would be delighted to speak with me. So students, the connections you make here at OWU really do pay off, and I encourage you to take advantage of them. So I was lucky to interview Senator Turner earlier this year. Her story of coming from a working class neighborhood in Cleveland is moving. Her advocacy and her words continue to inspire, and we are so fortunate to host her here for our Butler Jones lecture, someone who would surely be very proud of her activism and political work. So without further delay, I introduce to you Senator.
Wow. Thank you, Professor Dean. I really do appreciate that so very much. I know we're going to show a video, so I should not mess with your laptop, should I? I should just leave it right there. So I'm going to try now. Oh, it is such a pleasure to be here. I'm going to try so hard to stick with my notes. I usually just speak extemporaneously, but I'm trying to be very disciplined tonight, so we will see. I know Professor Dean does not necessarily want me to exercise that kind of discipline, but I am going to try my best. I understand your university president, President Rock Jones, is in the house. Where is the president? Or he was in the house. So I want to clap him up. I'm going to tell you something. That's one of the coolest names ever for a president, university president, Rock Jones. Go ahead on with your bad self. Beautiful. And then to Professor Vanessa Hildebrand, I was honored to be able to be in class with her today. It was so wonderful, so I want to shout her out as well. And I got a chance to meet so many wonderful people this evening, Jason and some other folks. For Allie, Allie is wonderful. She controls my life. I was just telling her parents that she really is the boss, not me. And when you have that kind of power, that's power. You know, she's not drunk with power, but she definitely has the power. She is absolutely fabulous. She worked on the Sanders campaign, leading advance teams all over the country, and was stationed in 2020 in South Carolina, which was one of our hardest states ever to try to conquer. And even though we didn't win that state, we worked our behinds off. So the voting is no reflection on how hard we worked in South Carolina, and Allie was very much a part of that. So as Professor Dean laid out, OWU students, you never know who you're going to meet throughout this journey, what contacts and connections. So when you're in that classroom and you're looking at your colleagues, I mean, don't just look at them as another student and they're with you. I mean, they are, but you don't know what they're going to grow up to be. And we had one of the best, if not the best, advanced teams of any presidential campaign, and Allie was one of the leaders of that campaign. So, OWU, let's clap it up for your very own. And her parents are here today to support not only their baby, but they got a favorite ice cream spot here in Delaware that I just wanted to shout out. But can we clap it up for Allie's parents? And then I have another person here. Is my mic too loud? I feel like it is. Is it too loud? Is everybody okay? Let me know, because I project, though. Maybe that's why I'm feeling that. One other team member of mine who lives in the greater Cleveland area, Miss Regina Adams, is here with me today, so I want to clap her up, too. See, it takes... It really does take teamwork to make the dream work. And, you know, some people are in the foreground, some people are in the background. We could not do the great things that we do without those people. And so it's very important for me, for them to know in public how much I appreciate what they do and what I am allowed to do because of them. So I'm going to get to my notes, and I'm also going to go off my notes. So that's how this is going to roll, but we're going to do this. So I'm honored to join you this evening and be a part of a tradition here at OWU with the Butler Jones Lecture Series. This institution of higher learning is better because of his vision of creating a more just society through action and through scholarship. That is what he did, and I am so glad that his legacy lives on, and you are a part of that legacy. Here we are still working to form a more perfect union. Well, some of us are working to form a more perfect union. Some folks are not, so I'm just going to tell the truth about that. But some of us are working to form a more perfect union, and using scholarship and action as vehicles to get us there is very profound. Just one of many vehicles, but you are here in this place, in this space. As I told the students in Professor Hildebrand's class, and they had lots of questions, and we're gonna save a lot of time for questions and answers, that I do want you to remember, this is particularly for the students, that you are here in this moment and you're following in the footsteps of other generations who were here in their moment. I want you to know that you are empowered in this moment. You don't have to wait until you graduate or walk across the stage to be the change you want to see in the world. I'm quoting Mahatma Gandhi. You can do that right now. Be the change that you want to see in the world. I want to encourage you because I remember I'm having flashbacks. I haven't been in the classroom, I was telling Professor Dean, since 2015, and I miss it so very much. I taught at a community college in Cleveland, Cuyahoga Community College, and that's where I got my start, and I miss it every single day. So to be here with you is edifying to me as much as I hope that I edify you. So this moment, like most moments, calls for collective action that both recognizes and centers the needs of working class people from all walks of life. A coalition forged by the struggle, a common struggle for respect, for dignity, and for economic viability. Now I want to pause and just go extemporaneously right there. You cannot truly be free unless you are economically free. And that is what the hookup, how race and class are linked together, whether they want to be or not. That is just what it is. I'm flashing back to President Franklin D. Roosevelt, and in many ways, the New Deal was not perfect. It left out black folks. That's a lecture for another time. But the foundational principles of the New Deal and what the president had to try to do to help this country recover from the Great Depression, and then to recognize that after World War II, that having the Bill of Rights as they existed then as they exist now, was not enough to win the day for the American people. So he envisioned an economic Bill of Rights. And in that economic Bill of Rights, very much ahead of his time, he came to the conclusion that you could not have true freedom unless you had economic freedom. And that is why he was pushing for the economic Bill of Rights before he died. And part of that economic Bill of Rights, it's almost going to sound like I'm talking right now, Jason, that he was talking to us right now in this day, education for all. Sound familiar? Not radical at all. Well, I take Professor Angela Davis's definition of radical. It just means getting to the root, baby. That's what radical means. We're going to get to the root of some things. Ensuring that people have places to live, housing, as a right. This was in the 1940s. The White House conducted a survey of the American people in the 40s, and the overwhelming majority of the American people believed in what FDR was pushing. But we fast forward to our time and to our moment, and we got some folks on the other side of the political scale, and we might have some of those folks in here today, and that's fine with me. That's what university is about, who do not believe in the things that President FDR was pushing in the 40s. Education for all, jobs for all, taking care of people who cannot take care of themselves, health care. In the 40s. Overwhelming majority of the American people, because they understood what the president was pushing, which is very much rooted in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I'm talking to college students here. That you can never self-actualize without having your physiological needs taken care of. You cannot climb up the triangle without having those things taken care of, and that everybody in this country has a right to those things. Now, part of the hookup, how race and class are linked together for life, is that as we look at class, looking at class alone is not enough to pull up from the peculiar institution that put black folks where they are right now today in terms of the wealth gap in this country, the black-white wealth gap in this country. Yes, we must look at class, but we also must look at race. And in looking at race, we must come all the way and realize that the legacy of chattel slavery still rears its ugly head today in the systems of this country, be they social, political, environmental, they're all there right now to this day, and they are linked. And so as we look at class alone cannot address that. We must look at race, and in looking at race, we must look at anti-blackness. They all go together. We cannot look at one without looking at the other. They are intertwined forever, whether they want to be or not. So I'm all off my notes. Like I knew, Ali said it was going to happen. So a coalition forged by the struggle, a common struggle for respect, dignity, and economic viability, a coalition steeped in lived experiences and understanding of both collective and cultural, collective struggle and cultural struggle that may be different depending on what community that you hail from. A coalition willing to fully understand but not accept the current environment of predatory capitalism, excessive greed, and immorality as the final chapter in present-day America. Those of us who believe in justice in all of its forms cannot and must not accept America as it is today. That you have hundreds of thousands of people who are unhoused, who will sleep on sidewalks tonight. You got in Jackson, Mississippi, they had dirty water. Flint, Michigan was the canary in the coal mine. There are other communities that have dirty water in the United States of America, a hegemon nation. I could see if we were a poor nation. We are not a poor nation. We are the wealthiest nation on the face of the earth. Yet some of our sisters and brothers and family and friends have to deal with dirty water. And that is not by accident that Jackson, Mississippi is majority black, that Flint, Michigan, majority black, and the neglect that has happened over the years. Jackson didn't just get like that overnight. It came from neglect. Neglect by whom? I'm glad you asked. The state. These policies are created by people. Who are the people? I'm glad you asked. The people that we elect to office. And things do not have to be this way. They are made to be this way. And so that's why the collective of the willing who see the injustices that are permeating in this country, how is it that 400 folks have more wealth than half the population in the United States of America? It is obscene and it is untenable. And we should not stand for it. I was just reading the article. Well, I ain't gonna lie, I didn't read it. I glanced at it. Let me be honest. I just kind of glanced. But it was a whole article about how somebody jumped over Bezos for one of the most wealthiest people in the country. And I'm saying, who in the hell gives a damn? When some people don't have food, some people don't have anywhere to live. Some people work their fingers to the bone, 3 and 4 and 5 jobs, and they still can't make ends meet. And we wasting precious journalistic time talking about how Jeff Bezos is no longer number 2. We worship at the feet of the ultra wealthy, but then we tell poor people, get by how you can, the best way that you can. I think the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King said it best, and I'm paraphrasing him, that we got socialism for the wealthy and rugged determination for the individual, something like that. He said it better than me, but y'all get the picture. That we don't mind bailing out Wall Street and big banks, but Big Mama can't get a bailout. Big Daddy can't get a bailout. And so in the hoods where people are misunderstood, whether they are rural hoods, urban hoods, or suburban hoods, the working class people of this nation deserve better than what they are getting. And government is designed for us to do collectively what we cannot do as individuals. And government should be calling the fouls. And I call the foul right now because it is obscene what is happening to people in this nation. Why is it that we are the only nation, industrialized nation, let me be very clear, that doesn't have universal health care? That don't compute for me. While people are going bankrupt, or even people who do have insurance, they're underinsured, and so they're still bumping their heads against the wall. Where a bureaucrat gets to decide, somebody in an office gets to decide if you do have insurance, whether or not you can get the prescription that your doctor just said you needed. Where people can't afford their insulin. Where we got to beg elected officials to do the right thing, to do the bidding of the working class people of this nation. But one of the reasons why they cannot do the bidding of the working class of this nation is because they have to answer to their owner donors. These are the facts. And so the working class languishes and are overburdened. And the likelihood that you are born poor and will die poor in the United States of America. We can do better, we must do better, and we must make the demand on these folks that we elect to office. So meanwhile, back at my notes. Predatory capitalism, excessive greed is immoral. We cannot accept this as the final chapter in America's history. True change that touches the masses only comes to fruition through the hearts, the minds, and the hands of the oppressed. And yes. Now, when I talk about working class people, I'm really talking about folks who don't have a sugar mama or a sugar daddy or a trust fund. Is that all right? That's who I'm talking about. And so there are some of us who are blessed to be at the top of the working class. Some people are in the middle of the working class, and other people are at the very bottom of it as we define the working poor. But if you have to work for a living, if you cannot afford to take months off without ruin, then you are part of the working class. That is a broad swath of people. And so all of us that are part of the working class, or our parents are a part of the working class, should be in solidarity with one another to change things in this country. And in that working class coalition, we must realize that race is a problem, racism is a problem, anti-blackness is a problem, and then it touches all other people of color, and it is rooted in the peculiar institution. Now, I know some of these folks, they don't want critical race theory taught, they don't want black history taught, they don't want anybody to face the burden of what this country was and how it is still, to this day, systemically. Because you can only change a thing if you're willing to face it. And why is it that we are programmed to believe that if you get, I don't? That if somehow we recognize that certain groups of people suffer disproportionately, now it's taken from you. In other words, the gospel of scarcity and painting people as the other has us at each other's throats. And guess who benefits from that? The status quo. We must recognize that working class people from all identities are suffering in this moment, but there are some people who are suffering disproportionately because of cultural practices that are made real through public policy in the United States of America. You heard me hint, I said I wasn't going to go down the road, but I might just go a little bit about the New Deal, using it as an example. Very good policy. But within that New Deal, they left out domestic workers. Because what, the president had to strike a deal with some racist folks, I'm trying not to cuss, some racist people who were elected. That's my second language. When people ask me, S&T, do you speak a second language? I say, oh yeah, cursing, that's it. And I'm proud of it, baby. I will not be shamed. Because sometimes that's all, Jason, what we say, sometimes that's all folks understand. You ain't been cussed out today, that's it. So So, because I want you to follow me on this. So you have this new deal that is designed to pull this country out of the Great Depression. Really what pulled us out, y'all know what pulled us out, World War II. That's a lecture for another time. But however, he had a president with a vision. He understood. He did the fireside chats. He talked to the American people. He made them, he ain't had the benefit of Twitter and Twitch and all that good stuff. He just did good old-fashioned on the radio fireside chat. But in having to make deals with elected officials from all over this country, bigotry reared its ugly head as it always does in every generation. And so some people were left out. So they left out domestic workers, they left out farmers. So let's focus on the domestic workers, shall we? Who do you think represented the majority of domestic workers? You damn right. I got to say damn on that one. Black women. Now, scholars, are you following me? That was a policy decision that disadvantaged black women. So therefore, if those black women, whether they were single women or women in families with children, do you see the pattern? The GI Bill, all of these things, public policy. So we must use public, folks act like, you know how the middle class was built, the white middle class was built deliberately by government. Deliberately by government. But yet you have some of these folks acting as if black people and other people of color are asking for handouts. That is not the case. We must recognize our sins in this country and we must correct them. And we got to do it collectively. So if you get, that doesn't mean that I don't get. What a beautiful world it would be. And working class folks are only asking for what they deserve. They want to be paid a living wage. Shout out to the railroad workers. Ali is timing me. Lord, I ain't even halfway through my notes because I'm extemporaneous right now. But can I just shout out the unionist movement? I mean, this is part of my conclusion. The unionist movement is a key to how we build race and class solidarity. Because guess what? When people in a union decide to strike, they don't care who you voted for. We're going to unite based on what we have in common. And what we have in common is that the man or the woman got their feet on our neck, and we are going to strike, push for, and strike if we must for better wages, work conditions, and benefits. So let us, I'm old enough to remember what the railroad workers just did. They said, oh, baby, we about to strike. Well, President Rock Jones, they couldn't have that. See, the railroad workers are in control. They said, we're going to shut this mother down. You won't be getting your goods. You won't be getting your services. Y'all ain't getting nothing until we get some better wages, some better benefits, and some better work conditions. And guess what? President Biden said to the CEOs of these railroad companies, get y'all behinds in here right now, because what I can't have happen before my midterms. Sometimes good policy, good politics makes, for good outcomes. What I can't have before the midterms is the railroad workers shutting it down. Do you think they cared who's Republican, who's Democrat, who's black, who's white, who's gay, who's straight? No, none of that. They are uniting based on what they have in common. So whether that's Amazon or Starbucks, I want y'all to follow the pattern. I do believe that the unionist movement, which was not perfect, they had some little racism in that too, Professor. There's a little racism in everything, isn't it? Unfortunately. I'll take one of those, and a dash of bigotry and racism to go with it. I mean, that is the American, it is the way it has been, it is the way that it is, but it's not the way it has to be moving forward. And that's where people like us in this room come in. But workers are exercising their power. And they coming together based on what they have in common. And that is why we must keep race and class together. So very few, well, let me go back. To tackle this thing, we must admit it exists. So I'm talking about the racism. Human history is steeped in struggle, good versus evil, right versus wrong, us versus them. The advancement of human condition requires a keen understanding of not only the aforementioned dualities, but their relational connection. Very few relationships are forever, but the case of race and class, they are locked into a torrid love affair. The nature of this hookup is steeped in the human struggle. The genesis of this struggle, be it race or class, is based on a system that was designed to exploit the masses of struggling people and force them to choose one over the other, when in reality, race solidarity and class solidarity are inextricably linked. They are soulmates for life. We do not have to choose one over the other, but we must be willing and have the courage to understand that some people do suffer disproportionately based on some things. And race is one of those. We're gonna play a video by Professor Michael Eric Dyson, but hold on, Professor, I wanted to read something from Manning Marble, who was a professor, and he was an expert on race. And this is what he said. He said, by dismantling the narrow politics of racial identity and selective self-interest, by going beyond black and white, we may construct new values, new institutions, and new visions of an America beyond traditional racial categories and racial oppression. In other words, we can build this thing new. We can reimagine what solidarity looks like and it feels like and what it is if we have the courage to recognize some things and take it further. In other words, identity politics alone is not enough. Just even from a tactical standpoint, black folks make about 13% of the population. So now we need some co-conspirators and some allies. Now, ally gonna go so far, but a co-conspirator gonna be like John Brown, like. I ain't gonna lecture on John. John Brown went all the way. I mean, his kid, he sacrificed a whole lot. But we need some allies and we need some co-conspirators. And then lastly, he said, the crisis of black politics can only be resolved through the development of multi-class, multiracial, progressive political structures. And that is why we cannot allow people to separate race from class. And we cannot allow them to scare us and separate us when we talk about race and class, the hookup, the torrid love affair forever. Okay, now, Professor Dean, we ready to hear from Professor Michael Eric Dyson. This is about 3 minutes long, and I'm thinking what I'm going to do, because the discussion is better. I'm going to wrap this thing up after the video, and then I think, Allie, I will be pretty much on my timetable that I set for myself.
Martin Luther King Jr. was jailed once in Birmingham, and he said he turned to his white jailer and said, you know, you and I aren't that much different. There's not a huge gulf that separates us. You don't have control over the institutions which govern your life. You don't have a basic say-so in American democracy, and yet the dominant forces of white supremacy manipulate you into believing you are my enemy. And unfortunately, that's a strategy that hasn't changed.
So manipulate you into thinking you are my enemy. Y'all follow me on that? I mean, Professor Dyson did in 3 minutes what I just did in 20. Go ahead.
Nixon, and before Nixon, George McGovern before that on the Democratic side and the Republican side. And so I think what we have to tell our white brothers who are working class, blue collar cats, is that you're in the same boat as most African American people, as most Latino people. You suffer from the economy equally. If you allow elite white politicians to manipulate you into believing that your real enemy is a black guy who works alongside you in a factory where you're both inhaling toxic chemicals that will lead both of you to die early, as opposed to this elite figure in the American political echelon or corporate structure that is living off of your anxiety about this black guy, you're going down to defeat. And I think what we have to say to them is that we're in a larger same boat in terms of class, in terms of some of the cultural values we share, even if we have different racial approaches to that. It's interesting that we have a language and vocabulary for race in America, but we don't have much of a vocabulary for class. And many people can't make that distinction. Black or white, well, what about poor or rich? What about health care or non-health care? And when we begin to break the numbers down, the number of white people on welfare, the number of white people who are poor, the number of white people who don't control the government in ways they'd like to see, and the number of white people who say, you know what, you want affirmative action, but why should your kid get an advantage over me? Or you want reparations, why should your kid get an advantage over mine when we don't have any economic wherewithal either? And I say to them, look, it's not either or. What's amazing is that right-wing conservatives become Marxists when it comes to the issue of race. Aha, you better watch out because those black people are taking money out of your pocket. How many black CEOs of major Fortune 500 companies are there? How many black senators in the Senate? How many even black Congress people? How many people where it counts for white people in terms of their livelihood, are they subject to black rule? Not many. So when white people back up and begin to make an analysis about how they have been manipulated by these white elites, there will be the possibility of forging a much stronger link between progressive, working class, blue collar, white and black and Latino and red people as opposed to the continued manipulation of white working and corporate elites.
That's it. I mean, that sums up. Race and class is linked, and it's not an either or. It's not I get and you don't. I want you to imagine that we were on a sandy beach right now. That sounds good. We're on a sandy beach. We're on a sandy beach right now. And everybody has a bucket. And I say to you, and as far as the eye can see, all you see is sand. And I say to you, get as much sand as you need. Now, remember I just told you, as far as the eye can see, all you see is sand. Nobody that is there with the bucket is going to be a threat to you because as far as the eye can see, there is sand. In other words, you are not going to feel as though you're not going to get your share of the sand on this beautiful beach. That is the mindset that we must have about working class solidarity that is undergirded with a racial consciousness. That as far as the eye can see, that there is enough sand on the beach. These politicians that preach a gospel of scarcity, they are wrong. They want it to be scarce for people like us, but it's plentiful for the ultra wealthy in this country. I'm old enough to remember when they said, we must bail out the banks. If we don't bail out the banks, the American economy is going to crash and burn. And then we were convinced that that had to happen. Well, how about a bailout for the working class in this country? And that if the working class is not bailed out, this thing is going to crash and burn. Guess what? Because there's enough sand on the beach as far as the eye can see. It is how it is used. It is how public policy is used and for whom it benefits. So we need policymakers on all levels of government who understand that those policies and those changes must be directed to the least of these, our sisters and brothers and family and friends. Because if it's directed at the least of these, everybody else above that, they're going to be just fine. They will be just fine. So my last quote, well, two last quotes. I'm a quote machine. I love quotes, as you can probably tell. Two people I want to bring into the space with us, if that's all right with you. One is one of the greatest novelists of all times, 20th century, James Baldwin. He said, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. I'm asking you to suspend your disbelief and that we fight on the battlefield together the best way that we know how, in class and race solidarity. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. We must have courage to admit and to see the need and to be willing to do something. And then the last one is Congresswoman Barbara Jordan, one of my favorite all-time quotes. She said these words, what the people want is very simple. They want an America as good as its promise. And that's really all of us are fighting for. An America as good as its promise for us and what we love, and for generations yet unborn. If we center those things in our fight for a type of justice that has not yet been seen in this country, there is nothing that we cannot do collectively. Yes, race and class are in a torrid love affair, and you cannot separate one from the other. And to have a gain on one, there must be a recognition of the other. And that together, working class people can and will rise. And I want you to look to the unionist movement as a very strong example, not the only example, but a very strong example of how we accomplish just that. So I'm gonna stop right there. Allie gave me the high sign. We're gonna open up. I'm gonna stop right there, and we're gonna open up for questions. So Professor.
So we do have time for Q&A, but we do ask that you actually use the mic for Q&A. You can probably project your voice, but this is really especially about the recording, and so everybody can hear. So would anyone like to start us off with a question? Oh, we have.
Hi, I'm Brianna Mack. I'm a professor in politics and government. My question is, so like talking about like the intersection of race and class and how important that's all well and good, right? But for my students that have taken classes with me and voters and elections and all this stuff, we hear this talk every time right before elections, right? And then it's back to the same old, same old. So I want to know what your thoughts are on like the incumbency advantage and like how to dismantle that, because that's the true status quo machine in politics and maintains things.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, let me assure all of you, I'm not on the ballot right now, so I'm not here right before my election particularly, but I understand where you're coming from. It is hard to overcome an incumbent, especially incumbents in Congress. If you are an incumbent, like 97% of the time, you're going to get back in there no matter what. So that is not, the ballot box is only one way. That is not the only way. As I mentioned in class today, voting is the end of the process. You got to be in the game even before voting starts to happen. And you must do it both on the local, state levels of government, regional levels of government, and not just the federal levels of government. Because locally, you can get more done than what you can do at the Congress. So don't just look at what's happening in Congress and the presidency for that change, because it takes too long. You want to look to local. I think the key is the local people more so, because they're closer to you, and you can touch them more readily and jack them up more readily too. Not physically, but get them to do what you want to do. But I understand exactly what you're saying. The system is broken. I mean, it just is. And we got to get more people to understand it is broken and more people willing to make a sacrifice to turn it. Your point about some incumbents, far too many incumbents, they get comfortable because they are part of the status quo. That's how it is. Let me give you an example. How is it we have a child tax credit that cut childhood poverty in half? It was temporary. How do you give families a child tax credit, then you take it back? So those same kids that you just took out of poverty, now you catapulted them back into poverty. Why? Because they were answering to their owner donors. And I'm talking about Congress. Most of those people are incumbents. We need more people to run and challenge the system, even if they think they cannot win. A lot of these people are not challenged, so they get to sail on through to the general without being challenged. None of this is easy, but it is absolutely doable. Not easy, but absolutely doable. But my recommendation is that if you really, really, really want to change the system, some of us have to be committed to working on the local and state level and not just get seduced by the shiny object, which is the Congress and the presidency. So I appreciate your question.
May I please hear your views on prison abolition?
On?
Prison abolition.
Oh, prison abolition. Oh. I think criminal justice system there cannot be criminal and justice system together, that we must reform this injustice system. It's a legal system that is working exactly as it is designed, that it was not designed to rehabilitate, it was designed to lock people up forever, that there is an escape clause, as we all know, in the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. I would encourage anybody that hasn't seen 13th by Ava DuVernay, you should watch that documentary that lays it out about the 13th Amendment and how slavery through the prison system is very much alive. There are human nature, I'm going to put it this way, two ways. Human nature is not perfect. So are there people who need to be away from general society? Absolutely. Because who we fooling? Human nature can be incredibly good and loving, and it can be incredibly cruel and dangerous. So there are some people who should not be in society because they are a danger to society. Do I believe that the majority of people who interface with the injustice system should be locked up for the rest of their lives and not rehabilitated? Absolutely not. And so we have to reimagine what the system looks like. Bail reform, for example, and I have lots of colleagues who are working on bail reform. Why is it? There are people in jails right now who have not been charged with anything, but only that they're poor. They don't have money to make bail. We need to totally reform that system in the United States of America because it plagues the poor. The system as it exists right now benefits the ultra wealthy. And it seeks to wear down people like us who might not necessarily have the financial means to be able to deal with that system in the long run. And then lastly, we need true rehabilitation. I served on the Judiciary Committee in the Ohio Senate. And lots of people definitely came before that committee, but when we were working on some reforms, some light reforms, we didn't do enough, we did a little bit. I remember one of the gentlemen who came and gave his testimony before that committee. What's your name? Adrian. He said, I came out of prison worse than when I went in. And I got a PhD in criminology, and not the kind you get from a university. Because the system itself, it makes the people who go there worse when they come out. And so it benefits all of us to want real reform within this injustice system and make it a true justice system, not lock people up forever, because they're coming back. Most people are coming back. Most people don't stay locked up forever, but we're making them worse. That can happen on the federal level, but it's best done on the state and regional levels of government to get that real change. But we do have a problem on our hands in this legal system that is working exactly as it is designed to work. And guess what? It's costing us too much, too. We don't get a good return on that investment. We could do a whole lot better. At least when I was in the Senate, it cost $25,000 or so per person to house people in prisons, when in some of the poorest school districts in the state, we were barely paying $10,000 to educate. What is the better use of that money? It's better on the positive side of the ledger and not on the negative side of the ledger. So there's lots of work to do within the legal system that is not just, and it is especially not just for black and brown and poor people from all walks of life. So we need to fix it. And by the way, while we're doing that, the president needs to just go ahead on and take cannabis off of Schedule I and decriminalize it, legalize it. Let's just go on and do that and let people free who have been sentenced because they had cannabis. It's wrong. And thank you for that question.
First, I just want to say thank you for shouting out Flint, Michigan. You know, not a lot of people talk about that too much now. I'm from Flint, Michigan. You know, so a lot of people try to act like that problem is solved now because it's not on the news anymore. But I kind of wanted to ask you what you think the problem is with gentrification. I talked to Lillian Curry. She's the CEO of the Cleveland Foundation, and she's bringing great infrastructure to urban cities and urban populations. And when somebody asked her about how she's going to do this without gentrifying these communities, she didn't really have much of an answer. And where do you think that problem can start to be stabbed at a little bit?
Yeah, and what's your name? Cameron. Yeah, gentrification is a problem. People are being pushed out of their neighborhoods. I believe one is to have a community benefits agreement where you come into a community and you're doing all these beautiful and wonderful things, but can the people who live there and have lived there for generations, some, but for a very long time, can they still afford to live there, or are you pushing them out of their community? So part of any move to beautify or to change the structure of a place must center the people who live there. And if what you are doing to that community makes the rents too high for the people who've lived there for a very long time to be there, then you are doing something wrong. They should not be pushed out. So it's really bringing the whole community into the planning phase of what you are trying to do. Gentrification is a problem. There's a scourge happening in the country right now, and I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with it, where you have these private companies going into communities, buying up private property and becoming, they own it, so they rent. That is a problem. And it's happening all over the country. And that's another thing. Again, government is supposed to call the files. That is a file. And even though we are in a free market, the market is not totally free. And you know why I say that? And economists who believe in the same things, I mean, I'm learning this from some of the economists like Stephanie Kelton and others who I, believe in, which is government creates the rules. So it's not really a free market. And we can't have government act as though it is helpless and its hands is tied in terms of righting the wrongs. And it is wrong. Gentrification is wrong, and allowing these big corporations to come into communities near us to buy up property and make it harder for people to rent or to buy homes is wrong as well. So we must do something about it. So my answer was pull the community in as you are making the design and hear from the people who actually live, work, and play in these communities that you are really pricing people out from being able to live there. And thank you for that question.
You started out talking about collective response and solidarity, working class solidarity. So I want to know how you imagine the collective response to white supremacy and this phenomenon of white militias.
I mean, it can't be tolerated, and so we need our white sisters and brothers to join with us in that. That burden of dealing with white supremacy does not fall on the shoulders of black people and brown people. It's all of our responsibilities to do something about white supremacy, which is very much in the DNA of this country. It was how it was founded. We stole the land of the indigenous people. You enslaved Africans and then their descendants for generations. It is very much a part of what America is. But what is also a part of what America is abolition. The civil rights movement. That's part of America too. And so we have a new battleground. Never in the 21st century did I think we would be fighting these fights. But I can't get January 6th out of my head. I don't know about you. But that was white supremacy at its worst in our lifetime, storming the Capitol to decide that they want to overthrow. They don't believe in the outcome of the election, so they just going to go in there and storm the place. One of the things we can pride ourselves in, for the most part, is the nonviolent transfer of power in the United States, at least non-physical violence transfer of power in the United States of America, and they upended that. So it is going to take a collective group of people who are willing to confront white supremacy, who are not afraid to call it what it is and to root it out. Now, from a legal perspective, the Department of Justice, state-level attorney generals have to do their jobs to make examples of these folks, to let them know that we are not going to tolerate it. And then ultimately, for the long term, this is a matter of heart and it is a matter of law. What kind of country do we want to be? Are we going to continue to hold on to the vestiges of white supremacy? Or are we going to ultimately do something about it so that one day, even though I might not be alive to see it, that there is a time where there is a generation talking about how that used to be? And that is going to come with individual and collective action, but also action at the hands of government, too. Government has to do something about this as well. You know, make an example of some of these folks. Oh, I think I saw a question right here. Oh, we're going to this side of it.
Hi, my name's Sarah.
Sarah?
Yes.
Hi, Sarah.
My question is about institutional racism and how, as a person of color in a predominantly white space, I feel like, and as a person who often has trouble with having their voice heard, how would someone go about explaining to white people and just people who are not of color how to treat myself, someone like myself, or how to recognize that it's even happening?
So Sarah, I want to get an understanding. When you say in this space, you mean this institution?
Yes.
You mean OWU?
Yes.
Mm.
I've had like a with previous professors and experiences throughout my time here. I'm currently a senior, but throughout my time as like a freshman, I had some experiences with institutional racism, and it wasn't handled in the best way, but and my voice wasn't heard. So how can someone go about moving forward and continuously speaking up on that?
Yeah, it's a work, Sarah. I wish I had the magic wand answer for you. Part of it is what you just did right now. Yeah. I mean, it's having the courage in this space to expose that, to say it. I mean, Lily, is Lily? Yeah. Lily, who greeted me when I got on campus today, she had mentioned similarly what you're talking about. So I think it is your courage to call it out right now in this moment. There's some people in here who are pretty powerful. I mean, your president is here right now, too. Not that he can shepherd over everybody in every moment, but it is a question that must be called on this campus about whether or not students of color feel comfortable. Now, you asked me, how do we go about, I mean, we can tell people to read all the institutions of higher learning. I'm really messed up about this because we're supposed to be more enlightened than anybody else, but it turns out that we're just a microcosm of the real world. I'm thinking about, Sarah, a lady by the name of Jane Elliott, and I want the students in here to look her up. Y'all can look her up right now on your phone. And Jane Elliott, when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, and she taught, you familiar with her? She taught in a suburban community, all white community, and she wanted her students to fully understand what that assassination meant, and so she did the blue-eyed, brown-eyed test. And she has traveled all over the country. I remember being a student and having her come to my institution and tell these stories, and she said that it is not necessarily the heart as much. It is the heart, but we got to force people to do the right thing, unfortunately. That's what we got to force them to do. And her blue-eye, brown-eye experiment was to help her all-white students understand somewhat what it meant to be in brown skin. But we need people who have a commitment. So you said it wasn't addressed, but here you are, a senior. You overcame even that. And what you endured on this campus is, unfortunately, what you're going to endure in the world. You saw Professor Michael Eric Dyson call the question, how many black CEOs, how many black United States senators, how many black people in Congress, what power are black and brown people controlling that prohibits white people from living out their greatest greatness? What you are enduring is a microaggression, and black and brown people have to go through that all the time, and you just have to push through all the time. I would hope that the people in this room who have the power to hear what you just had to say, even though it wasn't addressed in the time that you needed, now it's out here for everybody to hear, and it should be addressed. Nobody should feel uncomfortable on this campus, and I mean nobody. And if folks got problems with diversity, then maybe they just need to stay their ass at home and don't come to a university. And I'm so encouraged by you, and I'm so glad that you shared that story, and I'm sure that the people of power in this room are going to pull you aside before you leave here tonight to figure out what you went through and how they can help ameliorate that for future students, for the students who are right here, right now. You're still here. You ain't gone nowhere, so they need to go ahead and try to straighten that out. Can I share a story with you? You made me remember something. So when I was in high school, so I was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio, but for 5 brief years of my life, my mother moved my siblings and I, to a small little town in Florida called Boynton Beach. So 5 years of my life, I lived outside of Cleveland. So my 9th grade year was at a school in Florida, and it was very diverse. It was black, it was white, it was Hispanic. It was a beautiful, beautiful community. And I was in drama class. Can y'all believe? Now, I'm gonna let you in on a secret. Can I? Don't tell nobody, but I'm really shy. I'm really an introvert. So one-on-one, I'm shy, and I can do big crowds like this, but I'm shy. But so anyway, back to the story. So I tried out for the play. It was Charlie Brown. And I wanted to be Lucy. And I practiced and I practiced. I was in that mirror. I was performing for my mama and my siblings and everything. And so when it came time to try out, I went in there and I did the thing. Have you ever done something in your life and you didn't need nobody to pat you on the back because you knew you did that? I knew I was the best Lucy when I left that audition. Y'all hear me? So the next day, you know how they put everything on the wall and everything. I went there, my name wasn't there for Lucy. And I was having a WTF moment before it was WTF. You know, that wasn't there in the olden days. I was like, what? So President Jones, I went to go see my drama teacher. And I said, what happened? I knew I was the best Lucy. And he said, you were in fact the best Lucy. But Lucy ain't black. You were the best, but Lucy ain't black. Now this is before many of you in this room was born. But I can't tell you, even as accomplished as I am today, navigating all types of halls of power, fancy titles in front of my name and behind my name, running presidential campaigns, even as I stand in this room with you today, as who I am in this moment, I am still crushed by that. And I have flashbacks all the time. So I feel what you're saying. Those little microaggressions, somebody got to address it. It's unfair. And it was unfair to 9th grade Nina Turner to tell me that I was the best, but Lucy ain't black. And thank God that times are changing. They haven't changed too much, but I'm going to see Little Mermaid. Y'all hear me? Little Mermaid is black. She black. She black. I'm going to get some redemption, live vicariously through her. Or when Brandy played Cinderella, you know, or even the Hamilton play, right? Now, Hamilton took that a little too far, but anyway. No, I love the play. I love the play. But I'm just trying to say, and I'm getting all choked up. Just even listening to what you said to me, which triggered me to say that what I am saying to our white sisters and brothers and family and friends, that when black people and other people of color have to endure these kinds of microaggressions, it can live with you for the rest of your life. And it is not the responsibility of black people and other people of color to deal with white supremacy. It is the white community's responsibility to check your folks and let them know that you're not going to tolerate white supremacy in these United States of America, to be an allyship and to be a co-conspirator with people who have to suffer the abuse. It is abuse. I'm gonna get me a do-over on that. I might do my own damn Charlie Brown play. I'm still not over it. I'm not over it. You hear me, baby? I ain't over it. It hits me every now and then. So we're going to do something about that. We're going to do something about that as a community. And it just starts right here. What we can do it, just one little step at a time. If you decide to, and I'm quoting Mahatma Gandhi, I believe this was his quote. Some people say it wasn't his quote, but I'm going with it. Be the change you want to see in the world. be an ally or co-conspirator with somebody of color or somebody that is going through something of other identities. We need each other, and so that pains me. Is anybody else pained by what she had? Aren't you pained that it wasn't addressed? And she's a senior, she done went through this, but she's gonna be all right. And I know the people in this room are gonna be community, and even if it's only you do that. So babe, you are courageous. Layla? Oh, I'm sorry.
So for you as
What's your name?
Christy.
Christy.
For you as an individual in your career and just like overall life, what are your goals? And like, do you imagine yourself at a certain point where you're able to say like, this is what I want to see, and like, this is where I feel fulfillment in my life and my career? And also for us as college students, where should we envision that for ourselves? Like, what goals should we have?
So Christy, right? Okay, this is a two-part question. Okay, give me the first part again. What do I want to be when I grow up? That's what I took it as. I don't know yet. I really do not. I consider myself blessed, even though I've gone through a lot in my life, and everybody, Christy, everybody in this room has a story. And our stories are not all the same, and that's beautiful. It might have some similarities, but our stories are not the same. It's like our fingerprints are not the same. There's a poet by the name of Langston Hughes. Anybody heard of him? There was a poem. He wrote many beautiful poems. One of them, Mother to Son, Life Ain't Been No Crystal Stair. And I would have never imagined that I would be where I am today. And I still, Christine, I mean this, I still don't know what I'm going to do with the rest of my life when I grow, because I got so much more to give and so much more to do, including doing my own Charlie Brown play. But anyway. When I was a sophomore at a community college in my hometown of Cleveland, Cuyahoga Community College, I remember coming home from school and there was a note on the refrigerator door. We're going to take one more question after Christie's. We're going to wrap this thing up because I could go all night. I'm really feeling good about being back on the university. I miss the classroom so much. Y'all might not be able to get rid of me. But Christy, I was a sophomore at a community college trying to become a cycle breaker. And on the refrigerator door, because we didn't have text messages. That was the text message. Put the note on the refrigerator door. That's the text message. And the note said, go to the hospital because your mother is there. And I didn't think anything of it because my mother has a history of high blood pressure. I'm just thinking she's just having another episode. But little did I know that that was going to be a turning point, a defining moment in my life. As I got to that hospital, and I informed the nurse who I was, and I was just Nina then. It's in my early 20s. And the nurse leaped from her seat and she escorted me to a back room. And all of my siblings were already there. I'm the oldest of 7 children. Everybody was crying, and I knew all was not well. My 42-year-old mother was in a coma. She had a brain aneurysm. And she didn't come out that coma. And she died. A poor black mother with 7 children. 7 of us. I'm in my early 20s. Everybody's 2 years apart, so my baby sister was around 11 or 12 at that time. And she died with her dreams deferred. Langston Hughes also asked in a poem, what happens to a dream deferred? My mother didn't have a life insurance policy. She didn't have any money in the bank. And she died on the system. I am a system child. That but for the system, the safety net, some days, I don't know how we would have had food, and some days we did not have food. Or having my mother too embarrassed to tell us that she couldn't afford to pay the electric bill. So we don't have lights or gas. Even though my mother never lived, to see her oldest daughter accomplish some pretty cool things. I believe that she's in this ancestral plane cheering me on. For every degree that I got, I did it for two people. One was her in terms of the past, and my son for the present, because we're always working in threes. We are working for the past if you have a connection to your ancestors and what it means to be uniquely who you are. You are working for yourself, and then you are working for the future. I took all of those degrees in her name. Every stage I crossed, every fancy title, every office I was sworn into. So that was a longer way of me saying to you that things in life are going to happen that you will not be able to control, but it is whether or not you can persevere through the moment and take those gut-wrenching moments and turn them into something beautiful. Everybody can't necessarily do that. That could have crippled, I don't want to use the word cripple. That could have, pushed me back. But I used it to motivate me, to fuel me. And even in this very moment, I wonder, and I want my mother to be proud, even though she's not physically here. So I still don't know. I got so much more life to live and so much more to give. I still don't know exactly what I want to do. But I do thank the Creator, and I am a spiritual woman. My mother was a preacher, and we had to go to church 8 days a week. I'm telling you, it was something. It was something. So you may hear some of that in me, the black liberation tradition. That's where I get it from. 8 days a week is a lot. Now, in terms of the second part of your question, I answered the first part in a unique way, right? I'm trying not to cry. The question about, for students like you, what can you do? Am I getting it right? Tell me.
Yeah, just like, what should we envision for our futures?
Envision for your future. Well, everybody in here is majoring in something, I hope. And I hope you ain't spending up all your parents' money because you don't know what the hell you majoring in, okay? Pick a major and graduate. Because when you get in the real world, hell, it ain't going to matter no way. Just go on, underwater basket weave and do something. Get out of here. My best advice is for you to do you. So you got to be connected to who you are. Not just what you, because you're so much bigger than what you're majoring. But what do you want to do with that? And what do you see as the mark that you want to make on the world? You got to be in connection with who you uniquely are to be able to use the gift that you are earning through your college education. I would also say that since you are in a privileged position, and I'm not talking about privilege economically, because I know everybody in this room is not privileged economically. I have a college degree. I was not privileged economically. But we are privileged because we had the opportunity, or you have the opportunity, to get a college degree. I want to use the words of Charles Hamilton Houston to paint this for you. He was a professor at Howard University, and he had a student in his class. Just a regular, everyday student. But as history lets us know, this wasn't just an average student. Thurgood Marshall was in his class. And so as he was teaching black law students, he talked to them about their responsibility to community. And he said, and he was talking specifically to students who are in law school, but I want to use this to motivate you. Whatever major you have, I want you to take this to heart. He said, you must be social engineers. And if you are not social engineers, you are a parasite on your community. He understood that the people who were able to be in a law class at Howard University were a part of that talented temp that Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois talked about. Now, we can debate talented temp, but we won't. I want you to follow me on this point. That whether you want to be a lawyer, a teacher, a doctor, whether you want to go into the field of finance, hopefully you got a heart if you go there. Because we need some wealthy friends. Now, I ain't going to tell, we need somebody on our side. We need some wealthy folks who believe in justice, who believe that the type of capitalism that is permeating this nation is obscene and cannot stand. We need some folks like that. But I digress. You all are social engineers. And you have a privilege to be on this beautiful campus of Old Wu that many people will never get a chance to enjoy. You got to see yourself like that, even in your current condition. And so I am saying to you, in the spirit of Charles Hamilton Houston, that you and you and you and you and you and you and yes, love, you have a responsibility to be a social engineer. So as you are getting your degree and figuring out who you are in this life, that it is your obligation. I done choked myself up, hold on. I was just a tickle in my throat. I know you can't cough these days. Just a tickle, I ain't coughed the whole time. That you do have a responsibility to be a social engineer. And guess what? You're going to reinvent yourself over and over again. That what you decide to do at the beginning of your career might not necessarily be what you're doing at the end. That not even the sky is the limit for what you can do and be in this world. Utilize your gifts and your talents and change the world. You got to take care of you first, because you can't, those of us who fly on the airplane, you know what they say. If the mask come down, baby, put it on you first before you try to help somebody else. All right, I am having a lovely, lovely time. We got time for one more question. All of these questions, they just got me amped up. Who? Oh, yes.
Sorry,
what's your name?
Lily.
Oh, Lily. I'm sorry, Lily.
It's all good. So my question is, if we take to heart what you said, race and class are soulmates for life, that if we are able to have the courage within ourselves to create solidarity with racial consciousness, do you believe that we'll be able to attain a more obtainable American dream?
Yes.
And how would we start?
Well, we're starting right now. Y'all in this lecture. This is beautiful. Hopefully I done planted some seeds. Yes. I mean, I have nothing else to say to that. That's going to be my shortest answer of the night. Yes, Lily, yes. And what a perfect question to end on. I want to thank you all so very much for taking a part of your evening to be here with me, us together, having this most vital conversation. I hope that I planted some seeds for some of you that even if they don't, we got to cultivate the seeds. You might wake up tomorrow or 5 years from now and say, you know what, Sister Turner really, she did that. She said she was the best Lucy. She was the best Lucy. Thank you so much.